Hi there, welcome to my channel. The topic I'd like to talk about today is forgiveness. Letting go and getting free. Forgiveness was and is an integral part of my journey to success, and look, it will be for you too as well. Forgiveness is never really about the other person who's hurt you, or who's in the right, or who's in the wrong. It's always about you letting go and becoming free from your inner pain and hurt. It takes real courage to have to lower your pride and forgive. But look, I cannot overstate the benefits and the rewards of living this way because they're so immense. Forgiveness is not weakness. In fact, often you may find at the end of the day, the hardest person to forgive is really yourself. I've found this for me. I would like to share a bit of my life and things that I've had to forgive and let go of, just to give you some sort of context. Talking out your that inner pain and the inner hurt helps you recover. Don't ever concern yourself with what other people think of you. It's much more important what you think about you. When I first got out of rehab, I realised that out there in the real world, I was going to find it really hard to stay clean and sober. I needed a lot of help. I realised I was not ready for a relationship, as I'd not properly let go of so much pain in my life. And taking all of this into a relationship, look, it would have been an absolute disaster. Years later, some 8 years later, I met a lady who ended up assisting me in running a recovery group in Australia, and she seemed really lovely. I didn't realise how lonely and needy I was at the time. Looking back on it, I rushed into a relationship and then marriage with this lady. But loneliness is not a healthy basis for a great relationship. A truly successful relationship, I believe, should be two whole people coming together to enjoy the journey of sharing life, looking at what you can contribute, not two needy people coming together, looking to your partner really to supply your needs. It never works like that. Over the 8 years, I never thought it was possible to ever own my own home. But after saving hard, I bought my first house out in the country, and what an excitement that was. I'd worked really hard on this house, renovating it, and making it into what I can only describe as a lovely country home. My wife persuaded me to sell this house and move into town and buy a house together. I put up the deposit and she promised she would make a contribution to the mortgage payments. Once the new house was in both our names, I updated her car and brought her, actually I bought her a lovely sports car. We'd been married for 8 months, and look, it hadn't been all smooth sailing. But from my point of view, we had a future together. We had a home together, and things were looking good. But little did I know, straight after the house was in her name, and she had a beautiful car, she decided to leave me after a big argument. Look, you can imagine how devastated and hurt I was. Look, I just felt used and abused and stupid for being so trusting. I've got to say, I was just an absolute mess. I wondered if she ever loved me. I was looking at losing everything I'd worked so hard for, and it was almost too much to take. Look, I fell into a real hole of despair and depression and found myself in such hurt and pain. As time went by, I started thinking on all I had learned in recovery. I said to myself, I may be down, but it's not over yet. I can dust myself off and start again. I began drawing on what I'd learned and experienced in recovery and started adopting a more positive attitude. The thought of forgiving this lady was almost too much to think about. But forgive I must, especially if I want to move on past this and finally get free for myself. Each time I thought I'd finally forgiven, another layer of the onion appeared. The process of forgiveness took quite some time. I can remember about 3 years later, I walked into a doctor's surgery, and in the waiting room was my now divorced wife sitting there. My first thought was to go in there and give her a piece of my mind, I tell you, both barrels. Thinking on it, I decided to walk up the street and get a coffee and wait till she had left. As I walked down that last step, I can remember clearly this really strong thought coming over me saying, maybe this is the last time that you'll see her. Sit down and apologise for the wrong you did in the relationship and put it right. I then thought it should be her coming to me, not the other way around. I then reflected on all I'd learned. Look, I'm not responsible for her or other people's lives, but I am responsible for my own. And if I finally wanted freedom, here was the opportunity. I sat beside her and said, I'd like to ask you forgiveness for any hurt I had caused in the relationship and words that I've spoken to you in anger. And I'd like to apologise and make it right with you. I waited for a response from her, but sadly she chose not to say anything. As I walked out that door, I had this, what I can only describe as an amazing experience. I felt so free. Even walking, it seemed like gravity had stopped working. I was bouncing along the road. I had this sense of peace and joy. Look, words were, I can hardly describe how I felt. It was just amazing. The only thing out of this whole experience that really saddens me is we both had the same opportunity to get finally free, and she chose not to. And how sad is that? This was not an easy thing to do, but it was unbelievably freeing. Going back to the start of my breakup, I can remember walking across the park the next day at dusk, blinking back the tears, not knowing where to turn. As I was walking, I was grabbed by two really big island guys and dragged into a public toilet, and look, I was violently robbed at gunpoint of everything I had. After this ordeal, I can remember sitting in my car crying my eyes out and thinking of my broken relationship, of losing everything, of what these guys had done to me. I remember this being a huge defining moment in my life. There were so many voices in my head. These strong thoughts were saying, why don't you just go out there and use? Look at all the work you've done on yourself and all the help you've done in helping others in recovery, and where has it got you? You're now back in the same position where you started. Why don't you just go out and use? You've lost everything anyway. Why not just go out there and have a drink and forget all your sorrows? And what's so bad about going out there and getting a blast and hitting up? You'll feel so much better, and look, things certainly can't get any worse. I must admit at the time, I thought seriously about doing just that. After some time of just sitting there, I thought to myself, going out there and using will only destroy my life. I went and saw a friend and talked it out, and although this didn't fix everything, at least I've relieved myself of some of the anger and hurt and pain. Also, as part of my recovery, I went and saw all the people, this is quite some time after, I saw all the people that I had stolen from, and I decided to apologise in person to them all and put it right. I remember taking off my glasses on more than one occasion after I knocked at their door, expecting them also to do some knocking on my head. But seriously, it was very, very therapeutic being able to forgive and let all these things go and ask forgiveness and be forgiven. I now look back on all these circumstances. I'm grateful for the lessons I learned, the strength I gained, and understanding, and real true forgiveness. Today my life is amazing. It's not without its challenges, but I'm really happy. I'm not the man I used to be, which is why I'm not ashamed of my past, as I've developed so much. I have a beautiful wife. We've been together now for 13 years. I have a gorgeous 13-year-old daughter living with us. I have a beautiful older family, 2 daughters and a son. I have a beautiful home, plus much more. And I live a very comfortable life here in New Zealand. A life that in the early days I wouldn't have believed possible. I've shared this personal part of my life with you in the hope that through my journey I will supply not only motivation and excitement to you to step up, but more importantly give you some practical tools that I've found work for me that you can use to help you on your own personal journey. I believe there is greatness within you, that with God's help you do have a purpose and your life has meaning and worth. You can step up and truly be that successful person you were meant to be. Once you sincerely embark on this new journey, you will find it has a snowballing effect, and as you roll forward it will get easier and easier as you get used to changing and growing. And yes, as the pupil is now ready, the teacher will appear in all sorts of ways to help you. Thank you.